You have to invest in your relationship.
Yeah.
Think about it. We're always investing in our friendships and our work relationships, even helping our children, right? Which of course we have to. And normally, who comes last?
A marriage.
Your partner.
Welcome to this episode of the Couplepreneur Life podcast. And in this episode, we have got a power couple that we're going to be bringing to you, Jon and Kathryn Gordon.
Love this couple, and they are definitely a power couple. They're on their own, they're powerhouses, but together, they'll just simply melt your face off. But Jon Gordon, if you don't know Jon Gordon, you need to get to know Jon Gordon. He's a best-selling author and leadership coach, best-selling author. He's written like 27 books, for, all bestsellers. My favorite, The Energy Bus. He's a leadership coach for Fortune 500 companies, professional, collegiate sports teams. He's been featured on every media outlet, just too numerous to even mention. And alongside him, standing alongside him, is his lovely wife.
His beautiful wife, Kathryn. And Kathryn is, of course, a wife and a mother, a businesswoman, movie producer, but most importantly, she is a host of her very own podcast called Kathryn for Real. And Kathryn, on her podcast, keeps it real. She definitely keeps it real. So we encourage you to go out and follow Kathryn. But without further ado, and also that's one more thing. Co-authors of the book Relationship Grit, and we're going to be talking an awful lot about that in this interview.
So let's get to it.
All right. One of my favorite questions to ask, I think, how you met questions are always great, because how you met questions or how people meet normally is something that is off the wall, right? Or just happenstance or whatever it might be, coincidence, whatever. And you guys' story definitely is. Literally, if Kathryn hadn't been walking down the street, right, when Jon was standing outside, you guys wouldn't have met. So tell us a little.
Yeah, I will. That's exactly what happened. That's when you know it's a God thing. I was walking out of a restaurant and I happened to walk in front of his new bar that he opened. He was standing in the doorway and asked me to come in and have a drink. Now I didn't, I wasn't interested, but fast forward 2 weeks later, I'm at a fundraising event, and again, up comes this guy, this bar owner, and he insists on getting my phone number, and got my phone number, and long story short, we ended up getting together and talking all night on the couch about God.
After a lot of rejections along the way. And the funny thing is, when I saw her at the Best of Atlanta event, just standing there talking to a guy, to this day, she said she was talking to a guy. I don't remember her talking to anyone. I just saw her. And obviously the guy was an obstacle in my way that I literally had no idea he was there. I moved him out of the way and just focused right on her. And to this day, don't remember he was standing there. Talked to her, got her number. She said no a bunch of times. And our last conversation before we went out, I said, look, either we go out tonight or we're never going out. Because she kept canceling on me. I said, you've been canceling on me all these times. So either we go out tonight or we're never going out. I had to give the ultimatum. And she finally said yes.
Honestly, I was so shocked that this guy was nervy enough to say that to me, like he was that great. And I was like, okay, fine.
I was going for broke though. I was going for broke.
You're all
win
in.
or lose, let's go.
That's right. I think there's great business tips in there as well about not hearing no.
I've written about, we talked about relationship grit, right?
Yes.
And a big part of success is grit, is just not giving up. And I wasn't going to give up. It was love at first sight for me. For her, it took a while. For me, it was love at first sight.
Oh, I can so relate to that.
Love that.
Well, you just mentioned, let's get into that. You've come up with a method, a system that, on how you can have a much richer, fuller relationship. And you give it an acronym of GRIT. What does GRIT stand for?
Yeah, it stands for God, Resolve, Invest Together. And so you have to bring God into your relationship. And we talk about in the book how we did that. And it's always an ongoing journey for us. And then you have to resolve to stay together and work it out. So many times it's so easy to give up. People want to walk away. But you know what? stay where you're planted. The grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it.
Right.
Absolutely. Kathryn, can I ask you, I want to get into the rest of the grit, but with resolve, give me an example or something that happened in you guys' marriage where you had to resolve that you're staying together.
Well, I mean, there's the big one, which was when Jon dropped the bomb that he had cheated on me in the beginning of our marriage. So this is 12 years in, or 13 years into our marriage. By then we had both been followers of Christ. And he was, you know, we were living that life, but he kept feeling like he had to share this with me, that he had to get it off his chest. Well, you know, and it just so happened that I was in a position where I wasn't feeling connected in our relationship. I had went to lunch that day with some friends, and one friend was separating from her husband, another one was getting divorced, another one's husband was cheating. And I left and I was feeling really insecure about us. So Jon comes home from work and we go on a walk on the beach, and I'm, you know, sharing with him how disconnected I felt. And literally he stops dead in his tracks, turns around and looks at me and says, "I have something to tell you."
Oh.
Not always the best timing.
Yeah, right.
I didn't always have the best timing, and maybe not the best time to share that. But I felt like I needed to tell her the truth, and it wasn't because I was trying to get the guilt, you know, out of me. It was the fact that I knew we weren't as connected as we could be, and God kept prompting me because I had become a follower of Jesus at that time. I had become a person of faith. I was not happy about what I had done. I was not proud of what I had done, but I also knew that I was no longer that person. And I needed to tell her what I had done, because that secret was something I was keeping from her and needed to tell her. Now, you know, it was something that I knew might end our relationship, but I also thought it would make us stronger. She took it a lot worse than I thought, actually, though. Like, so even though I thought it could be bad, I thought she was going to say, "Well, you're not that person anymore. I know who you are now." But she felt such betrayal that it really did affect her in a big way. And so resolve was a huge part of that. Before we got to resolve, though, that's where the God came in. Like, we had to bring God into our relationship, right?
Right.
So how did
what
you,
Go ahead.
Kathryn, resolve? How did you then determine, because obviously you just got that bomb dropped in your lap, and even though it was 12 years ago, for you at that moment, it was brand new, right?
It didn't happen overnight. I mean, I didn't immediately forgive him. As a matter of fact, you know, you have to understand my history. Like, if anybody was going to be cheating, it should have been me.
You were a little wild.
Yeah.
I was always the one that was more sexually open, to be honest. And I don't, you know, like, not with the, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was the Puritan. I used to joke that he came over on the Mayflower.
Right.
So all of a sudden, to hear that he had done this, it rocked my world. And
I didn't have sex with anyone. That's important to know, though. That was not something that I did. But it was, that still doesn't absolve me of what I did. But there was flirting. There was other extracurricular things that I shouldn't have been doing. But I had the opportunity to. And the thing was, I walked away from the moment that could have been really bad. That would have been, I think, the end of me as a person, the end of our relationship, if I would have done that. But it still wasn't good, and it was still cheating.
No, but I think that's important.
Yeah.
And I didn't plan on talking about, but I think we should, because what happened to Jon that last day when he was with this woman that he was going to be having sex with, it was a God thing. Like, God intervened. And so I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, like it. Literally, the veil came undone, the fantasy that was there. And I think this happens for a lot of couples. It was like a fantasy. And all of a sudden, God the veil for me when I'm in the moment, and literally could have. I said, "I can't do this."
Wow.
And I left. It was like all of a sudden I saw so clearly what was happening. And I walked out of there and I said, "I will never do ever again, and will never put myself in a position like this ever again." That prepared me, because I wasn't a writer and speaker at that point. It prepared me for when I did become one, and then became well known and was traveling everywhere. It really prepared me to never put myself in positions like that ever again. So for me, it was a blessing now, right? But at the time in our marriage, in our relationship, you learn these lessons later on. But at the time, it was tough. And then telling her, tougher, because Kathryn didn't want to hear that at first. Like, oh, I'm a better person now because of it. She's like, yeah, you cheated on me. It didn't matter.
Right.
I felt the hurt and the betrayal. But what happened was when I told her, she didn't want to talk to me. She was angry. She was upset. And it was during that time that I'm on a plane going to a speaking engagement, and she was thinking about divorcing me. And I'm telling this stranger next to me everything that's going on. I'm telling my life story. He doesn't know who I am, but I'm telling him my life story. He said, you know, my wife and I say a prayer every night before bed. And it's a really important prayer for us. And it's really helped us connect and become stronger together. He told me his prayer, but I don't really even remember it. And I remember saying, God, what's my prayer? Like, what's our prayer? What prayer do you want for us in our relationship? And literally, God gave me a prayer. I wrote it down on a napkin. I started saying it every night before bed, but Kathryn would not say it. You want to take it from here? You wouldn't say it.
Well, this is where the resolve comes in. So there was that God part, but I wasn't immediately, ready to forgive him. I tried to cheat on him. And well, that's another part of the God part I didn't expect to talk about right now, but I was so angry. All I wanted to do was hurt him back. And I put myself in a position to cheat on him, and it couldn't happen. Again, it was another weird thing that came over where I just was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And so
that's not in the book though, is it?
I don't think it is.
No,
book number 2.
Yeah,
well,
it's
you
not
went
in the
pretty
book,
deep in the
but
book though. You didn't go that deep. Yeah.
we did for sure. I guess there was something.
That's going to be in volume 2, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, but what happened, and this is so important, that he was very, very consistent in his desire to, number one, show me his remorse, to be honest. And number two, to really show me that he wasn't that person anymore. And actually, number three, that he loved me. And so he said this prayer every night. It didn't matter if he was traveling, he'd get on the phone, he'd say it with my kids, even in the beginning when I didn't want to pick up the phone. And then one night I was laying there, and I had memorized the prayer in my head, but I would never say it out loud. And one night he started to say the prayer, and he always used to try to grab my hand and I'd pull it away. And this particular night, I actually reached over and I grabbed his hand and I said the prayer with him. And I knew that that was the night that I had started to forgive him. And that led us to our healing journey.
And the resolve part was I resolved to just pursue her. I resolved to love her. I resolved to write notes every single day and would leave her these loving notes by the coffee machine, by the refrigerator, by her sink where she washes her face. I would write all these notes, and she would read these notes each day. So I constantly pursued, constantly loved, resolved to just stay committed to her. Whether she was going to forgive me or not, I was going to do the right thing every single day to just let her know how sorry I was, how wrong I knew I was, and then to love her in the process. So you got to resolve to stick together. And that resolve sometimes it's easy to walk away, but you have to say, no matter what, we're going to find a way through this if you both want to make it work, which is the T, which we can get to later.
And there's something I want to say, because, listen, this is the transparency. We all have struggles in our relationship. Yeah. And, there's people will stray. The one thing I want to tell any couple that might be struggling with this, the one thing that Jon did, like I said before, was his consistency in showing his remorse and desire to be forgiven. But also, I had to build trust. And so at any moment I might say, give me your phone, or because I was feeling so insecure, and I'm not proud of those moments, and for me, but I have to give him so much credit, because no matter what I asked, I would ask him to share over and over the same story of, each woman. There was 3 of them, by the way. And
I was 29, 29,
Nice.
30.
Look, I think he's got to pick up.
I'm
But I
52
mean, I
now.
wanted to
Right.
hear, like, in detail, like I would think about something, but I have to say, he never, I know he's like, he never wavered.
Wow.
He answered my questions. He never got irritated. He never said, I'm so over this, I'm leaving, which a lot of couples that does
Right.
happen to.
Yes.
And that in itself is what it absolutely gained my trust and brought my love back.
And even if a couple's not dealing with a big thing like this, maybe they're just dealing with the kids are going crazy and they're fighting a lot when the kids are young and
Yeah.
they're stressed all the time and they're dealing with work and business and life and they come to hate each other because they're just so busy and stressed. They don't have any positive interactions. That's also where the resolve comes in that says, you know what? This is temporary. Let's resolve to work out our differences. Let's resolve to get through this tough time. And let's make sure that we're going to still work towards the same vision and goal that we have for a strong relationship, for great kids. We do talk about vision and purpose in the book because you have to have a shared vision and purpose that you're going to resolve to continue to work towards. So I think that's important because not everyone's going to have a cheating thing like we had, but they're going to have sometimes daily issues with times where you just want to walk away or where someone else seems more excited about you than your spouse or where someone else is giving you more attention than your spouse. And it's in those moments you have to remember, no, we resolved to stick together and we're going to do that.
Yep.
That's
Right
amazing.
on.
And you guys were, that was at about your, what year did that happen, John?
You're like 5 or 6 in our marriage. It happened like 4 or 5 in our marriage. But then I told her year 13.
Okay.
Again,
So
this is, I came to faith around 2006, 2007. This happened around 2001, the last time it happened. And then, so I had been on this journey of faith and self-growth and working on myself and really in many ways became a different person. Then you realize the issues you have. Again, we all come into relationships broken with issues, with challenges, with wounds of our past that cause us to act in ways that we're not proud of. And I think a big part of a relationship is to heal together. So we go through those tough times. We're going to resolve, heal together, that we take our imperfect past and create not a perfect marriage, but become more whole in our marriage.
exactly.
Absolutely. And no, go ahead,
Shared
Catherine.
this information in 2011. So
Right. Okay. So 2011 is when you found out. So, and we're in 2023 now. So however many years, that's 12 years, right? 12 years of past that. Think of what would have happened had you not both determined to be resolved, right? And look back over your life over the last 10, 12 years and all the things that you've been able to accomplish. Your marriage and your family stay together. You've got 2 kids, both, late teens, early 20s, right? Around there.
early 20s.
Early 20s,
yeah.
right. So think of what would have happened to your family had you guys not determined to be resolved. And like Catherine, you said, it didn't happen overnight. It was hard. It was hard. But now look at you, right? And that's the hope that I want to give others that might be watching who are just like, we are ready to throw in the towel. We're just ready. Look at Jon and Kathryn. They've gone through a lot. They determined to be resolved. And now they've got a marriage anyone would be envious of, 2 wonderful children. Their family stayed intact, and now they're serving others in powerful ways. So I know when you're in the middle of it, you're thinking, I'm done. Try to look past that. Look at where you could be, just like with Jon and Kathryn.
Right.
Laura, it's why we wrote the book. We wanted couples to stay together. This book is for people who might not stay together, but they need to stay together. It's not for the couples that are dealing with abuse and you should part ways and get out of there. This is for the couples that are struggling, that want to give up, but we're saying don't, because on the other side of that is going to be a lot more joy, a lot more love, a lot more intimacy, an amazing relationship that we have now. And our kids have seen that. We're a testament to that. And it's so funny because we told the kids what had happened. Like when Kathryn found out, we shared it with the kids what had happened. And now we even talk about that. Like we openly like, oh yeah, when I did that, man, I was a moron. What was I thinking? And, but at the time my son's a teenager when we told him, And anytime he'd be in trouble for something, he would try to turn around on me. Dad, I can't believe you did that to Mom. No, punished. We're not talking about me and what I did. Like he was so smart and such a manipulator. He tried to turn around on me. It was a tough time.
That's pretty. Leave it to a teenage boy, right?
Right.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, we're talking about their book, Relationship Grit here, and it is a great book. In fact, we read it. We loved it. You can see it's already getting worn because we took it to the pool and read it. And we read it because we're in this space, right? We're all about couplepreneurship. And what I love about this book is how transparent you guys were in writing this book. And in the points, real practical sense. I mean, you share everything just like this experience, and it's spoken of and provided in a very practical way. I mean, there's so much here. Lots of nuggets of gold. One of my favorite, and I wanted to get to, and I even have it marked up in here, is Kathryn, you mentioned what you call the curse of expectations, which really hit home, I think, for us, and we see it with a lot of clients that we work with, this curse of expectations. Would you mind just kind of defining that, explaining that a little bit more?
Well, sure. And also, I know, I can speak to it we used to work together. So Jon and I did. We had a Moe's Southwest Grill franchise, and I booked him when he first wrote his book and wanted to get speaking. I was the one making the phone calls all over the country and trying to raise some excitement about this guy, Jon Gordon. And so the expectations, I mean, it came in all ways. He would expect me to make sure the house was always clean, or, this was happening for the kids. Of course, I was the one that still had to go pick them up when they were sick. I had expectations of him in terms of, why aren't you going to pick up the groceries? There were always,
why aren't you handy?
Why aren't you handy was a big one, because I still had to do all that. So, and you know what? I also wanted him to be a mind reader. And he wasn't a mind reader, right?
Yeah.
That's good.
And so and so it really took us starting to have that communication, not fighting about it, but trying to see each other as a team. And we'll talk more about that and together. But go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah.
I see you grabbing.
No, I think you nailed it in terms of we have expectations of each other, and I would expect Kathryn to be a certain way. Like you come into the relationship initially, and they are a certain way. Like they are the way they are. And then as you're married and you go on with the relationship, you expect them to be a certain way, like how you want them to be. But you're not married to your expectation of them. You're married to who they are. But we want them to fulfill our expectation. And so often they don't. And so often we don't meet each other's expectations. I'm not handy. And her dad was very handy. He was a flight engineer. That's not me. When something breaks around the house, the kids don't go, Dad, they yell,
Mom.
They yell, Mom.
If there's a bug to be killed or a snake to get, it's Mom.
It's Mom. She handles the tough stuff like that. I'm like, you want a book written? You want to help with your report? Like, come to me.
Dad's your guy.
You want the toilet bowl fixed? Like, Kathryn comes from a long line of plumbers and brothers of plumbers.
Okay.
Like Kathryn will.
That's why we get along. Okay.
Yeah. I can replace the whole inside of a tank.
Yeah. I'm like, Kathryn, come look at this. We got something wrong here.
Yeah. The toilet keeps running. I've got to go in there.
What do we do about this? So then there's the part of I grew up with a Jewish mom, an Italian family, right? A lot of food, a lot of guilt. So I would expect Kathryn to be like my mom, where she would cook all the time and be like a Jewish mother. That's not her greatest love language.
No.
Her love language is intimacy. Mine is food, right? So for most guys, right, if her love language is intimacy, they'd be like smiling. Hey, intimacy, connection. We know we're talking about here, sex. They would have loved that. But sometimes I just want a pot roast. Sometimes I just want some food. And so even though I know I'm very lucky and fortunate in that way, like you have expectations, right? I'm coming home. Are you going to make me something? And again, she would go out of her way to cook for me and take care of me, but it wasn't like her primary thing. So instead, what you have to realize is, how about we celebrate each other's differences?
Yes.
Instead of focusing on the expectations. I know she's different, and now I love and support who she is, not who I want her to be.
Yeah.
Oh,
And we talk
that's
about
good.
that in the book.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
We talk about in that book because, you know, Jon is very military, he's very disciplined. This guy's been doing the same thing for the last 20 years. He gets up, he walks. I mean, I could tell you what Jon Gordon does. I can tell you that I probably do something different every day of the week. The only constant that I do is drink a cup of coffee. Like the consistency it's not there.
When we wrote this book together, it was like herding cats. I was like, Kathryn, you've got to sit down here and write your section right now. Kathryn, write your section. I would sometimes like frame it up and say, okay, here's the section you need to write. Just sit here and write this section. And then she would, but it was literally the dedication and discipline to have her do that. And as she writes her next book, we laughed because I'm like, I'm not doing that. You're gonna have to now try this yourself and see how it goes.
Yeah, I did. I've done the outline. I'm coming up with creative ways of how I'm gonna actually write it because, you know, having him as the, you know, help me with the framework and the bumpers was.
I'm actually probably still gonna do it.
I was going to say, hello. She's got Jon Gordon.
You guys
as
shot, right.
the perfect person to help.
International
help write it.
bestseller.
Right.
I mean, right. It's like, daggone. You know,
I'm gonna
but I love.
negotiate some pot roast for some help with the book.
That's a
There
really
we
good
go.
idea.
But I love the style.
idea.
You kind of alluded to it. You go back and forth. I love the style. It's so fun and simple to read, but so deep. But the style, the way you guys went back and forth.
Right.
You know,
really get a flavor for
right.
each of you. Okay, so we did G and R, I.
Yep. You have to invest in your relationship. You know, think about it. We're always investing in our friendships and our work relationships, even helping our children, right? Which of course we have to. And normally who comes last?
A
Your
marriage.
partner.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's really important to make them a priority and invest in it. I mean, think about it. We have a bank account, we have a savings. You don't expect to accumulate money if you're not putting money into it.
Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
No.
Exactly
Yeah,
right. Okay.
So
No,
on
go
that,
ahead.
how do the Gordons invest in their relationship? What's something you guys do?
Right. Well, so one of the things we do, and John Gottman did a study, and couples who take time to invest in each other are 85% more likely to stay together. So as you know, Jon Gordon is a writer and a speaker, so he's always writing. I might be across the room with my, you know, hands in the sink, greasy dishes, whatever. And John will go, "Hey, honey, can you come in here and read this?" It's the last thing I want to do at that moment, right? I might be listening to a podcast or watching a show, and I don't want to go sit and have to focus. But I know, you know, over the past, you know, however many years, that is something that goes so far with John. And I will come in and I'll read it. I'll give him my input. And so it's those small sacrifices and investing in your relationship that just really strengthen it.
I think that's a great point. You said small sacrifices.
Yeah.
We often think investments as the big thing, but it actually really is the little things. You think about it. You could do so much for your spouse, right? And it's always about the big things we take for granted in many ways. We don't think about the big things. Got this big house where you might have a nice car.
Big diamond.
Yeah, big diamond.
Right.
But those are not the big things. It's those little things that you do for each other, that you make time for each other. That's what matters most. So for Kathryn, the investment for me might be like waiting for her to go take a walk, and we'll go walk together instead of going to do it on my own. It might be when she asked me to go get something from the grocery store. Okay, I'll go get that. It might be framing up and helping her think about the next book. I know I'm actually going to be helping her with that, even though I was joking that I'm not. I'm going to help her with that because I've got to invest. It's now that she's speaking and doing her own thing. I'm taking a lot of time when I'm in the middle of writing my book, and I got a lot on my plate. I got teams, I got trainings, we got so much going on. And she wants me to look at her PowerPoint. She wants me to look at her presentation. She wants to run things by me, and I'm having to make the time to do that. And so she invested so much time in me. It was also taking care of our kids when I was on the road and coming home, and she was there. And here's the other thing. We always, you know, it wasn't always perfect. It wasn't always equal. There was an ebb and flow. And there were times Kathryn invested a lot more. And now I feel like there are times where I'm having to invest more. But it's the least I can do. So it's going to be an ebb and flow, and it doesn't always happen the same week, same month, even the same year. The relationship is an ebb and flow, and how much you're investing in each other. But you do have to make time for those small sacrifices. So whereas in the beginning of our marriage, I was always too busy. Don't leave me alone. I'm busy. I'm doing this. I'm doing that.
He was the consumer. That's another thing. You have to be the investor in your relationship, not a consumer. And he was a consumer.
And now over time, I really learned and really worked on being an investor. And now, like, if she ever needs something, I'm not too busy. I will make time. Unless I'm in the middle of writing a chapter or a paragraph that is essential. And she's like, John, I'm like, I'm writing. Sometimes I'm in the mad scientist mode of writing, and she'll understand that. But for most of the time, it's like, no, I'll make time. I have to make time.
Well, and with investment too. Earlier you talked about as you guys, you confessed to Kathryn what had happened. You then invested in those little things. You said you left little notes for her by the coffee machine. You did those little things. That's investing too. That's investing in the relationship. Yes, other investing is date night and then taking a vacation or something together. Those are bigger things. It's those smaller things that really make all the difference and have the biggest dividends, right? So
taking walks on the beach, right?
Yeah, that's
absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. We've shared, a similar thing. Laura left me, and I had anger issues and was violent in the home, and she finally had enough and left me year 3. And we stayed, we got back together because of God. We put God there first, and then became intentional, started investing in our relationship. And for the first, for the next couple of years, year to 2 years, it was just all, seems like we were just kind of going through the motions. Sure. Our hearts weren't there. But over time, it comes back if you do these things that you're sharing.
Absolutely.
And then you look at us today, right? So
okay, T. We have T. Last one in grit.
T. You have to do it together, and that was a little bit about what John said a minute ago. Yeah. It doesn't even always mean that it's equal, but you have to both want it. It's kind of like tug of war. So if you're both on the same side of the rope, if you're both on the opposite sides, I'm sorry, right. Your power is split. You've cut your strength in half, right? But if you both are on the same side of the rope, you're pulling together and your strength is doubled. So you got to do it together, but it's not always equal. Is that right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy, tug of war, right?
Love that.
Being on the same side. So, yes.
Yeah, and we've looked at it. We had to come to finally the conclusion or the understanding that it's not a 50-50. I love how you said, it ebb and flows, John. That's kind of the lie that the relationship is a 50-50 kind of a thing, or that we meet in the middle, we found it's really 100%. Sometimes you're the
100,
one.
100.
Yeah, 100, 100. You both got to, be given the 100%. And together. I love the pulling of the rope analogy. That's a good one. I'm gonna hack that one. Okay, so you may see that.
Yes.
See
Kathryn
that in our
told
book.
me the other day too. Kathryn said the other day, she goes, together has 2 T's in it.
Yeah. And so you're a team, and when you're on the same team, you don't keep score, right? So
Right.
You know what, and that's really good too. And here we're. Everybody that's listening or watching, you've got 2 couples here. We've been married almost 30 years. You guys have been married for how long?
26 years. It'll be 27 in May.
Okay. So young couples, listen to us. we do know a thing or two, right? About those things that, in the beginning we make a mountain out of a molehill of everything, right? But it is taking the time to be intentional, to have the grit that you need in the relationship, and resolve out of all the grit of the acronym. Resolve is my favorite, because you do have to be resolved. You have to be resolved that no matter what, we're going to see this through. And what's going to be on the other side is worth it.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yes. Okay.
Agreed.
Yes.
So what we mentioned, we've been married, we're almost 30. You're at 26, 27 years. What is something that seems to be, what's the biggest thing that you've learned to do or not to do in 27 years of marriage?
I'm going to go first. I was going to say something else, but I realized one of the biggest things for us in terms of me is having grace for each other. You know, we're not perfect, and you know, we still have our struggles. I have my struggles, and it's Jon having grace in that, and giving me space to figure them out within our relationship, that I think goes a long way for me.
Grace.
For me, Kathryn actually taught me this the other day. She even said it to me. She said, you know what the key to a successful relationship is? I said, what? She said, making each other feel wanted.
Wow.
Like, you got to make each other feel wanted, because if someone else is giving you attention and wants you, you naturally are going to pull in that direction, because you all want to be wanted. Every one of us wants to be wanted, right?
I love that.
So
Yep.
it's important that we make each other feel wanted and loved. And guess what? When you feel wanted, you want to be with the person who wants you.
Yeah.
So my job is to make her feel wanted. And the more I love her, the more she's going to want to be with me, because why? We're all searching for love.
Yeah.
So when you become love, right? You become love, you become what everyone is searching for. So she doesn't have to go searching for love somewhere else. She feels my love, and she knows God loves her, right? God loves you and I love you. And that wanting is really a key to a great relationship. And then the grace she talked about, when we do mess up, you know, she gave me grace knowing that I'm not perfect. She doesn't hold that over my head anymore. She doesn't condemn me. I know other couples where, you know, the spouse may have cheated in the past and they use that as a weapon, their entire relationship.
Yeah.
And that's not a successful relationship if you're doing that.
Yeah. And now let me say something, because I'm sure there are couples listening that might be going through this. It doesn't mean that they have a past. And I know the pain.
Right.
A past.
A
Yeah.
past.
I go,
Yeah. I know that pain. But if you really love this person, really, if you love them, then you need to give that grace. Yeah.
Love that, because it is tempting just to throw in the towel and say it can't be saved. But here we've got an example of it can, and not only be saved, but the marriage thrives, right? And you guys, I'm sure, even better. You can't even imagine.
Our marriage is, seriously, and I can say this only because we've gone through so much, is the most amazing, loving, intimate relationship. And it's because of the hard work. And it's still work. It's still work.
Yes.
So.
That's a good word, Kathryn. Again, if we're talking to some younger couples that might be, you know, getting married, in Richard's favorite word, they're all Twitter-pated and everything's, you know, wonderful. Hard times are going to come. They're going to come. Whatever it might be, you know, something that you guys experience, could be a financial thing, could be an illness, whatever it is.
Your children.
Oh.
Yeah.
That can cause a lot of,
Yes, a lot of stress and strife. But being resolved to stay together so that you get to be our age and you have a marriage that, again, others would be envious of, right? And that's, you got married for a reason, right? Hopefully most people get married, they love each other. And what are the words that we say at a ceremony, right? Till death do all the things, right? Sickness, health, death do us part. Did you really mean that? When you got married, did you really mean that? Well, if you really meant it, well, then you need to have some grit, right?
Right.
So,
yes.
Speaking of which,
does death do us part mean until you die or until she kills you?
hey, death is death, Jon. So
That's great.
I've been close to that one.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if you're looking for, you're looking for a passionate, secure, adventurous marriage. It takes grit. And Jon and Kathy in their book Relationship, Kathryn. I'm sorry.
I just corrected you, and I'm not supposed to do that either.
Right, you do that.
I even teach on that.
We have a
That's
video on
okay,
that.
Laura. I was going to correct him.
All right. Kathryn, I know we got great friends that are called Jon and
we do have good friends called Jon and Kathy, so it is kind of
Jon and Kathryn.
Yes.
So let's get to the point here. A great book here. It's a must read. They're not here to push the book. We're here to push the book.
Yeah.
Because it's a fun book. It's very transparent, just like this conversation we were having. They're very transparent and share their lives and their love, their pros, their cons, the good, bad, and the ugly. It's all in here. Check it out. And how can
well, can I say one thing too?
Yes.
Yeah, we do want to offer up links somewhere here too, where you're watching in the show notes. There's going to be links to Jon, and then also Kathryn. Kathryn's great podcast. You certainly want to check out. But
Kathryn for real.
Kathryn for real.
You guys will be on
real.
released on my podcast this week. It comes
Sweet.
out tomorrow.
Ooh,
Oh,
all right.
awesome!
That'll be a good
That
one.
was a lot of fun. Yes, yeah, that'll be a good one. I want to ask as we're wrapping up here. Do you guys mind sharing the prayer that Jon, that you determined that you were resolved to speak over your marriage and over your family? Do you mind sharing that with us?
Sure. You want to say it together?
Yeah, what do you say?
Why don't we say it together?
Sure.
Even better.
God, we invite you into our marriage and family to love us, to heal us, to unite us, and to strengthen us so we can grow strong together and serve you together and raise children that glorify and honor you.
Right there, everybody.
There we go. That's the mic
Back
drop.
this up, pause it, write it down. If you don't have your own prayer,
Sometimes we might, we say unite and heal in different orders.
Well,
but it's,
sometimes we'll mix it up.
it's usually the same thing.
So we have a free action plan, and it's the Relationship Grit action
Awesome.
plan. And I'll make sure to give you those links so you can
Sure.
share those with your listener.
absolutely.
And, I'll send you my prayer if they're welcome to use our prayer or any part of it to come up with their own or use ours. So.
And one thing I want to
Thank
add is that you said, we about pushing the book. The interesting thing is, we don't want to push the book. We just want you to save marriages. And I think
Right.
we're both aligned in that mission. I love the work you do because
Yes.
you care so much about couples. You want them to be stronger. You want them to stay together. And we love that. That's what you're all about. And that's what we're about. I got a DM about a year ago, and the guy was struggling with his relationship with his wife. He said they were headed for divorce. So I told him to read Relationship Grit and try to get her to read it too. Well, he responded a few months later saying, Jon, I thought you were just trying to sell me one of your books, but I read it. It's funny how people are so cynical, but he goes, I read it with her. And I want you to know, we were literally going to get divorced. We had the papers and everything, and we decided to postpone the divorce, and we're staying married. And then literally later, he sent me a picture of his family, of his wife and kids on vacation together and all loving and hugging. And I said to Kathryn, that's why we wrote that book. That's why we shared our story. We shared our dirty laundry. That's why I was willing to be transparent, because my brother was like, why are you doing this? You're a best-selling author. People love your work. Why are you going to share your past? Because we have to help people create their future. And if I don't share my past, then they're not going to know it's possible to change.
Yep.
And if I can change and we can change and we can stay together,
Anybody can.
They need to know that they can. And so that's why we wrote it.
Love that. Guys, you've given couples that are listening right now, you've given them hope, right? Somebody's listening that's going through some struggles, regardless of what it is, and you've given them hope. So, and we love that. And that's our intention as well. So
I just want to share one more thing. I know we need to wrap this up, but
no, you're good.
another great thing, and especially because I know this is specifically for couples that are working together, right? One of the things that really helped us was to have a family meeting and to sit around the table. And even if they don't have children, to weekly just sit down and have a Bible verse or something motivational, read it, and just discuss what's going on for that week. It absolutely helped build a really strong foundation for our family to connect. And it wasn't always easy to sit down and do it, but I highly recommend it.
Is that a business, but a relationship?
Yeah, not
relation-
business. Really, if you are in a do not talk business. It's for the home.
And it's being intentional. So your kids see you being intentional about it. And I'm sure there were times where both of them were like, oh, do we have to do this right now? Right.
And sometimes that was me.
Right.
Really, sometimes I was in the middle of something like, oh, here we go. But it never failed to be exactly what we needed. So
Awesome. Great advice.
That is
Great
so
advice.
real.
So,
Well, I am pushing the book because it really has been meaningful to us, and I believe it'll be very meaningful for you to read this. Again, they're very transparent. It's fun. It's easy to read. And these are simple things you can do. Not easy, but simple.
Practical things.
Simple, practical things.
Yep.
So there we go.
All right, so that's going to do it for this part of the podcast. We are going to move over to the member area. So if you're members, you go over and you can watch
We'll see you there.
the bonus content, the lightning round that we'll go through with Jon and Kathryn. And if not, thanks everybody for joining us. And we will see you on the next episode.